Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back on into the Blue Collar Psychiatrist. You may wonder who, in reality, is the Blue Collar Psychiatrist, and how does the Blue Collar Psychiatrist come up with all these strategies about how to live your life in a more productive way while all the time saving that most precious commodity, which is time. I grew up essentially without a father. When I was 6.5 years old, I found my father dead. He had gone to sleep the previous night, which was a Saturday night, and when I walked in, I didn't hear anything, because usually he would cook breakfast on Sunday morning, and you could hear the pots and pans. I didn't hear anything. So I went over to his bed, but I didn't touch him because I just sensed, even at that age, that he was gone, that he had passed away. I went and got my mother, and she started screaming, and pandemonium broke out. She called her parents and the other members of the family who were somewhat distant, and it just went from there. There were two sides of this family. I don't know exactly how to explain, because I can't tell you exactly how X married Y and Y married Z and Z had kids, and that is beyond my bailiwick. But I will tell you, the other side of the family had money, big time money. But the side of the family that I was on had money, but just enough to get by. My father had two sisters who were never married, and they lived together. He had a brother who was married to an older woman, much older than him. And then my father, of course, had a good job. He had a dry cleaning plant. He was in partnership with his brother. But my father did drink a lot of beer, but he was a functioning alcoholic. I never saw him slobbering all over the place. But he had a bad habit, and that was smoking those cigarettes. And back in the 50s, that was very common. That was the cool thing to do. And every morning I would hear, every morning. I can't prove it, but my guess is that he probably died of a heart attack in his sleep. Well, money talks and BS walks. And so the other side of the family treated my side of the family, which included me, my mother, the two old maid sisters, and my father's brother, in a looking down on all of them, because they had money and we did not have nearly as much money. And this is just the way it started. Furthermore, when you don't have the support of your family, especially a family of wealth in the community, then especially in a community where everything depended on your perceived social status. So you have nobody to fight for you. And that was part of the problem also, in that we were looked down upon. And this carried over into who you could be friends with, who you could date, and anything and everything involved in social gatherings that you could imagine. So now, on top of that, I had my grandparents. This was my mother's parents, not part of that original family that I mentioned. And they were very much, shall I say, in a routine, in a rut, did the same thing at the same time, at the same days, every single week. As I told you before, they went out to eat at the same cafeteria every Wednesday and Sunday, come hell or high water. So now you get to understand the background of the blue collar psychiatrist, surrounded by all this pathology and hatred from the other side. Well, I decided I was going to make something of myself, and I sacrificed a lot of social time by studying. And I studied and I studied and I studied, and I got into medical school. And just to show you who these people are and were on the other side of this family, on the wealthy side, one of them went up to my mother and said, "Where does that blue collar get all his brains from?" As if to say, I didn't deserve it because I didn't come from the right side of the family. And as I said, this also affected who you could date. Many times I had tried to make a liaison with one of these, the daughters of one of these people who are on the wealthy side, and it got nowhere. Because in a city like that, a community within a community, everybody either knows or knows of everybody else within that cultural community. So you knew where you stood. They pegged you at a certain point. You were not going to rise above that come hell or high water. And you see, this gives you an idea of who I am from my birth up and through high school and then even beyond. Because in high school, I just studied all the time because I knew that was my only way out. And that was kind of it. I was a nerd. I was a nerd and I was an outcast. Just very, very simple. Let's talk about the way it really was. And I got more angry and angry and angry about the whole thing because even at that age, I saw what was happening. I saw the other side of the family looking down on us. I saw the class system for what it was. And then came the time of deciding where I would go to college. And I told you the story before that my grandfather sat me down and told me that I should stay at home. Don't go away to college. Stay at home because otherwise my mother would be alone. And that I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't go away. Well, I did get a one-year scholarship to the local university, but I think in the long run it probably was not the wisest idea because in my situation I needed to get out of that environment. The whole damn thing. But I didn't do it. And then I went to medical school and then went through medical school and did reasonably well. Certain parts of it I liked, certain parts I did not like. And then I met some women here and there, but I was so shy because of how I grew up, because of my self-worth. I was extremely shy. And I could not hardly go up to women and talk to them. I couldn't even go and talk to even a guy to even be a social friend with him. And so it was an isolated type of confinement. Some may say that it was self-imposed, but it was both self-imposed and as a result of my unfortunate circumstances growing up. After I finished medical school, I decided I was going to go into psychiatry. I moved away finally for the first time. And I was afraid to do it, but my mother kicked my ass out, and rightly so, because she said, you know what, you need to make your own life. And she was right. And I started to feel a little bit better, but I still had that residual shyness of meeting people. It was still with me. And I went there, I went to school there, did my training, and I did enjoy my freedom, had a girlfriend for the first time, but then I went and started looking, where am I going to go practice? Where am I going to practice? And I started looking around and I decided I was going to practice because I had to get away from the same type of people, the same mentality of money is the only thing that matters. There were some of those there that I had to skirt around to get the hell away from them. And that's exactly what I did. And I found out a place, a location within the city that I had moved to that was had very, very few psychiatrists, and I got into that hospital. They accepted me with open arms and really turned my life around in that respect. But I still had issues, social issues, issues of meeting other people that still continued. And to some extent continues today, not nearly as bad. Later on in my life, when I was even in my 40s, I got married. And the marriage was okay, but it wasn't that great because in a certain way I had to be, I had to settle, not to settle, that's not the right word, but I knew that my choices were limited. And I did get married. I was married for 12 years. Didn't have children because of medical issues, which I'm not going to go into at this point. And that was it. My mother remained depressed and angry throughout much of her life. And finally, toward the end, the last 10 years of my mother's life were spent in an assisted living facility because she had Alzheimer's, which of course progressed to in the worst way in that period of time. And finally, she got to the point she didn't even know who I was. So you come to the point now of where you are. Where am I right now? Well, this is why all of this crap, I was going to say something else, all of this crap came from. It came from this type of a background. We can't escape our backgrounds. But this is a catharsis, in a way, of me telling you how not to live, what not to do, really. What I'm saying to you in these videos is, this is how I grew up. Do the opposite of what I do, to the extent that you can. Sometimes you just can't control outside influences and how they affect you. It's very, very difficult. But that's part of the reason. And I'm sure that you can see how when I talk and I create these videos, and when I relay them to you by a video, you can see the emotion in me. You can see me breathing kind of heavily, and it's like I'm reliving it as I'm telling you these things. But I say it with such passion and compassion for those of you out there who are living in a way that was similar, or it is similar to the way that I lived, and I try to steer you in the right way. I'm not a doctor. I'm not forming a doctor-patient relationship with anybody out there, but these are just general ideas based on my knowledge, based on my life, and I can tell you all the things that have to be done in life. I know what not to do, and I know which gives me a better idea of how to handle myself. And so this brings me up to the present time, but I wanted you to know, who is this blue-collar psychiatrist? What did he do? What makes him so special? It's just that I have the intersection of the book work and the treating of patients, both in the medical school and in the residency, and also my everyday life of how I interact with other people, what I have noticed about myself, what I need to continue to improve upon. These are the things that allow me to say to you, this is what you should do, or this is what you should consider doing, and this is what probably is not the best idea. And so I hope you get a better idea of who I am, where I came from, how I got to be the way I was, and why I'm doing these videos. Ladies and gentlemen, I remind you to drink and drink abundantly from the fountain of life. See you next time.